Okay, we're doing some more quotes, some Holy Grail wisdom quotes by me, P. Rogers. We're mostly going to focus on Jonathan Swift today. I got a couple little introductory quotes before that. A quote about survival. This is just my own quote. An animal's survival depends on its perception of reality and its environment. If it's unable to understand its environment, it has decreased chance of survival. And that's why you want to understand what's going on. And that's like my big frustration talking to a lot of people. They're just so hopelessly trapped in all this public school stupidity that you really can't teach them anything. So you just, politely walk away from them. You have to understand, no one likes you. Once you understand that no one likes you and you're on your own, then you realize, well, gee, I need to figure out what's going on so I can survive. How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to pay my bills? What's my long-term options? Okay. Once you realize the medical profession is not going to help you, then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get my act together. Okay, one quote from William Styron, the writer. He said, like Hemingway and Faulkner, but in an entirely different mode, Fitzgerald had that singular quality without which a writer is not really a writer at all, and that is a voice, a distinct and identifiable voice. This is not really the same thing as a style. A style can be emulated, but a voice cannot. And the witty, elegiac voice gives his work its bright authenticity. So, depending on what you want to claim as style, what you want to claim as voice. That's also true, though. When a writer is good, you're reading that writer because they write and talk in a way that only they're going to do. Okay, you have a feeling about the book. You know when you're reading Michael Crichton. You know when you're reading Dostoevsky. You know when you're reading Dickens. Okay, you know when you're reading Orwell. All right, and that's why they say you can't really teach writing. I actually think, though, the reason why most people can't write is because they can't talk either. They're boring, okay? So if you want to be a good writer, then don't be boring. And how do you make yourself more interesting? Well, you got to gain some knowledge, so study something or go have an adventure, and then watch comedians, read the good writers, and you get a sense of how it's done. But you're ready to write when you can talk about a subject in detail, people find it useful, and you can entertain people. They enjoy listening to your stories and stuff. So that's what writing's all about. Some people are closet nerds that don't talk much, but they can write a good verisimilitude, make something seem real when they write. And if you got that, that's fine too. All right, anyways, time for Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift lived from 1667 to 1745, and he wrote a very caustic type of satire. Michael Sugrue described him as having the most caustic satire since Juvenal, the guy from the Roman Empire. Okay, Jonathan Swift said the Enlightenment, from 1600 to 1800, that's really kind of the Baroque, especially 1700s is the Enlightenment. He said was trying to castrate Christianity, and Jonathan Swift defended Christianity. He would make fun of Christianity, but he'd defend it. And that's a nice thing about Christianity. It has a sense of humor. Okay. Leo Damrosch wrote a very nice biography about Jonathan Swift. I really liked it. It was actually my favorite book by Damrosch. Jonathan Swift was very sarcastic, deadpan, monotone, joke after joke after joke. And my favorite thing by him was A Modest Proposal, where he recommended that the Irish sell their babies as a food delicacy like veal to the British. He spent much of his life, in a sense, exiled to Ireland. He was born in Ireland, but he really sort of viewed himself as an Englishman. And he became the dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, but he really fought for the Irish people. He tried to help them. And he would complain. He said, I had the education of a dog. In reality, he might have been an illegitimate son of a rich guy who sort of covertly paid his bills to get him educated. And he was, motivated to self-teach himself. I have a lot of detail about his personal life and his stuff. I'm not going to go into that. But some of the things I liked about him, he was always, making rhymes, which were funny, writing things under pseudonyms in a funny way. He would have a kind of a crazy narrator for some of his books and stories, which enabled them, like the court jester, to get away with saying things someone else couldn't say. He was making jokes like Laputa sort of is, these could be vulgar words in other languages, as you can imagine, in Spanish. Okay? Another thing people often do when they want to joke is they put it in the context of some ancient history where there's no dog in the fight, like talking about Greeks and Romans. It's one of the greatest things about the history of the Greeks and Romans is no one really cares about one side or the other at this point. So you can be honest about what happened. You can't be honest about what happened about a lot of things in the Bible or in history from the 1900s because people get so offended. So when you talk about ancient Greeks, though, nobody cares. So ancient Greeks and Romans, that's another reason why they're so valuable. And the Greek gods are so much fun, the Greek mythology. Okay, he became known as the voice of Ireland because he stood up to protect Ireland. Let's see here. Gulliver's Travels is a classic. A Tale of the Tub is a classic. Modest Proposal, a classic. These are all the writings of Jonathan Swift. I wrote a book, about A Tale of Two Toes in a Tub, which was a spoof on Jonathan Swift, writing about peripheral vascular disease. That was one of my funniest books. All of my friends, they think that's my funniest book I ever wrote. A Tale of Two Toes in a Tub. It's about two patients with peripheral vascular disease of the foot going to podiatrists and vascular surgeons, and how one figures out how to save himself and how the other one just keeps screwing up, and all the jokes that I sort of come across from being an imaging guided surgeon are in that book. And so, like I said, I've had women, female doctors, just look at me and point at me and start laughing at me because that was a funny book. It's like my best joke material went into that book. One of these days, maybe I'll do a second edition of it. Okay, now we're going to start getting into Jonathan Swift quotes. And he had a lot of funny words. He called the English odious little vermin. He came up with the words like the Yahoos, the Lilliputians. Okay. All right. Here's his quotes. Good manners is the art of making those people with whom we converse easy, comfortable. Whoever makes the fewest persons uneasy is the best bred in company. When a true genius appears, you will know him by this sign. There will be a confederacy of dunces aligned against him. And that's true. If you try to do anything good, you will be attacked. Like when I speak about evolution, Darwinian evolution being a lie and a joke, I get all these trolls come out and give me a hard time. When I tell the truth about high-fat diets causing all these diseases, I get all these trolls come out against me. Or if I criticize soy or something, it's like when you do something good, it's like when you're over the target, you take flack, and that's just how it is. There's a lot of aggressive defenders of evil, bad things. And some guy comes out and has a better treatment for cancer. Stop! Discredit him. Take his funding away. Embarrass him. They don't want somebody improving over chemo. They're not going to let that happen. Okay, Jonathan Swift. You should never be ashamed to admit you were wrong. It only proves you are wiser than yesterday. The power of fortune is confessed only by the miserable. The happy impute all their success to prudence or merit. That was as well said as if I said it myself. It is useless to attempt to reason a man out of a thing he has never been reasoned into. My father used to say that about prescribing psychiatric meds, but it turned out the psychiatric meds were bogus. My dad meant well, but he was an old school guy, and he sort of read what he had to, but he's like a typical doctor. He hadn't read beyond that. Some men, Swift continues, some men under the notion of weeding out prejudice eradicate virtue, honesty, and religion. Yeah. They go by the letter of the law, this modernist BS stuff, and it's cruel and it's evil. Okay, like I said, social justice means something that's not just. Like I said, All right, the best doctors in the world are Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Merryman. That's good. Punning is a talent which no man affects to despise except he that is without it. Truth shines brighter clad in verse. Yeah, if you make something rhyme, it's a lot more memorable. It is the first rule of oratory that a man must be such as he would persuade others to be, and that can only be accomplished by the force of his life. Yep, that makes you a better speaker. Jonathan Swift. How do horses produce a square turd when their fundament is round? When I am reading a book, it seemeth to talk to me. Laws are like spider webs, which catch small flies, but they let the hornets break through. Yes. Rich people don't have to obey laws. They don't have to pay taxes. Their friends write the laws. Much drinking is little thinking. Nero was a saint in comparison with Henry VIII. Actually, I would disagree with that, but he was just closer to knowing about Henry VIII. Nero was pretty bad. He burned Christians as torches at night. Okay. He said, there is a society of men called lawyers that are bred up from their youth in proving by words multiplied for that purpose that white is black and black is white, according as they are paid. Burn everything English but their coal. Okay, let's see, he says, when he was, the character talking about the English people in Gulliver's Travel, he said, I cannot but conclude the bulk of your natives must be the most pernicious race of little odious vermin that nature ever suffered to crawl upon the surface of the earth. Okay, from Gulliver's Travel. He said, we have just enough religion to make us hate, but not enough to make us love one another. Few are qualified to shine in company, but it is in most men's power to be agreeable. Okay, let's see, what does he says? Nor do they trust their tongue alone, but speak a language of their own, can read a nod, a shrug, a look far better than a printed book, convey a libel in a frown, and wink a reputation down. I think he's talking about women. Okay, he said, great God, what genius I had when I wrote that book, talking about A Tale of a Tub. His Tale of a Tub was very clever. It was a very good book. Anyways, that's our quotes for Jonathan Swift. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you ever want to read a biography of him, the one by Damrosch was great. It's very entertaining and well done. Hope you found that helpful.